Hey everyone, it's Michael. Today we're going to be talking about another Goosebumps classical book. This one is one that people have recommended to me all over the internet, called Attack of the Mutant. Apparently this is many people's favorite, and I could see this becoming a lot more popular now in 2019 with how the MCU is so popular. The DCEU is there in competition with the MCU. Superhero films are a very big thing. Comic books are not so much. Manga kind of is getting bigger and bigger, I would still say. Especially with things like My Hero Academia. It seems like it's getting bigger and bigger as the years go on. But the thing is, I'm so shocked that as much as I loved superheroes when I was a kid, I wasn't really into comics per se, but mostly superhero movies and cartoons and all of that stuff because the 90s were excellent. I cannot believe that I had heard of this one and didn't know what it was about and never picked it up. It looks, of course, on the cover like a superhero, or a supervillain in this case, called The Masked Mutant. Our book mainly is almost like a loving tribute by Goosebumps and R.L. Stine himself as the creator of Goosebumps for things that I think pertain mostly to Marvel Comics, but I think it's supposed to be for comic books just in general. It's just the formula of the story, and for example, the villains' headquarters they look like a giant pink and green fire hydrant. It feels like it would be more like a Marvel type, tribute, I would say. And yet I really love this. I had such a great time reading this. This is a really good old classical Goosebumps book. It is more in the kind of wacky and wild and silly kind of Goosebumps books, but it's supposed to be like a superhero type thing. And it's really nice. It's really enjoyable. It just kind of proves my point about how R.L. Stine is such a versatile writer, that his range is magnificent. He could be writing a scary story like he does with Goosebumps Wanted, The Haunted Mask, or the other Haunted Mask books, mainly the first two. Or you could do Slappy, Night of the Living Dummy books, and he could do so many creepy things there. He can do funnier books like this. This isn't really funny per se, but it's more adventurous. It's kind of like this, kind of, I wouldn't say coming of age, but like right before that. If there was a genre that was like pre-coming of age, that's what this feels like. More so than any Goosebumps book I've ever read my entire life so far. I love Attack of the Mutant. I could not recommend this more to you folks if you haven't read it. But let's talk about the plot a little bit. Essentially, this is about a kid, teen, whatever you want to call him. I'd say he's probably like 12, maybe. He is obsessed with comic books, particularly the supervillain called the Masked Mutant. And I think there's also a superhero that he loves too, called the, what was he called? Something Gazelle? I can't remember what it was called. It was something Gazelle. But I think the comic that he loves is The Masked Mutant, the villain book. And he collects these. He's very obsessed with it. He's just a big comic book guy in general. But he doesn't read them, apparently. He sometimes does, but he mostly just buys them to collect them, which there are people in the world who do that. This might seem a little out of reach and out of understanding for kids and for people who aren't familiar with the comic book community, but there are people who just buy comics and don't read them. I'm not one of them. I love to read. I don't want to buy comics just to not read them. I don't care how good the pricings can be. This was so much fun. Like, it really was a fun read. I would say it's kind of, I don't know if slow is the word I want to use, but it has a lot of build up to a finale that I think is pretty cool. The ending is a little rushed, I will say that. But let's get back to the plot, though. Our main character, of course, is obsessed with comics, and he also kind of ends up finding something weird. Of course, the villain, like I said, the Masked Mutant, has this specific-looking headquarters that look like a giant fire hydrant that's pink and green. One day, he happens to be walking down the street after he gets off a bus, and he met this weird girl named Libby. He happens to find the headquarters just out of nowhere, sitting over on a vacant lot that's usually vacant as far as he knows. He isn't really on this side of the town very often. He had to go get his braces adjusted, and when he went down to this way and got off the bus early, he happened to notice that the headquarters are right there on this street. Not in the middle of it, but like on the side in a vacant lot. Well, as time goes on, he starts realizing that the reason he hasn't been able to see it before, and a lot of people don't even know it's there, is because there's an invisibility curtain around it. Kind of like, again, very much like the old, the old Super Friends kind of thing. This feels so much inspired more by the Super Friends cartoon than anything. It has that same kind of villainous power with those ways, like an invisibility curtain. When was the last time you heard that in comics as an ability? That's kind of interesting. When was the last time a villain had a headquarters in comic books? That's pretty cool, too. This feels so much inspired by like the Super Friends the more I think about it, even though I think there's a lot of feelings and descriptions and characters that feel more like Marvel superheroes and Stan Lee's kind of writing. It would have been cool to get if there isn't already, one of those graphic novel adaptations of Goosebumps stories of Attack of the Mutant. That would be fantastic to own. I really wish they'd make that if they haven't already made that. Very good idea. Again, it's kind of an obvious one, because it's based around comic books. There's also like a Justice League type of group of superheroes in this world that they don't introduce in the book. They just kind of talk a little bit about them, which that's nice. It's kind of just not a secluded world. But there are some really cool things. For example, our main character starts finding comics every once in a while that have him in them. And, of course, he gets his delivered every single day to his house, pretty much. Not every day, but every once in a while he gets deliveries to his house. When he reads the new issues, he starts finding out that, like, he's in the comic. And it showed him, like, sneaking in with the girl Libby that he met on the bus when they first see the headquarters and they try to sneak in. It's really interesting. Really cool premise. Really different type of premise for Goosebumps. I never would have thought that this could have ended up being as solid as it was. Now, of course, with it being Goosebumps and being aimed more towards the middle grade, elementary school audience, very early middle school audience, you can't have things like fighting in it. Like the villain's powers are kind of lame. He turns into anything he wants to turn into because he can rearrange his molecules. So he can turn into like, anything pretty much. He's supposed to be solid objects. And that kind of becomes a key factor in the story, too, about the solid objects versus liquid objects or gas objects or anything like that. The finale, like I said, does feel kind of rushed. The very end, the last chapter, it's a nice wrap up, but it really could have been pushed out to about 2 chapters longer than it actually was to have a really good, paced in a better way type of ending. It just kind of, the story is getting better and better and better, has a really cool conclusion of how to beat the villain, and then it just ends, and I'm also going to say this. Now, I could be wrong. I've never looked at the Series 2000's book listings. But how in the world have we not gotten more of these particular books tying to the Attack of the Mutant books? Or this first one, Attack of the Mutant. How have we not gotten sequel books, even if they weren't tied directly to this? The end of this book opened up an opportunity to do more of these, even if it's just supposed to be a one-time tribute. With a really interesting plot twist at the very end of the last couple of paragraphs. I really liked that ending, and I really wanted more. If there's more, please let me know down in the comment section down below of Attack of the Mutant. I'm going to do some research myself to see if there is anything close to this, because this was really cool. I think we deserve a sequel, frankly, whether it comes now in the Slappy World books or whatever. Imagine if we just randomly got one from the Slappy World series out of nowhere. How cool would that be? Anyway, guys, and also the cover art is very beautiful. I love this as well. That art looks so just cool. I love seeing the superheroes, or the super villain, headquarters in the background. I love that. It looks such a cool looking picture. Goosebumps was so unique, especially with the covers and all of that. Just a really cool thing from the 90s that nobody really talks about, even though they're still being produced all the way till now in 2019. Anyway, guys, what are your thoughts on Attack of the Mutant? Put your thoughts in comments down below on whether you love this book, whether you hate this book. Is this one of your favorites? I would say out of the classical Goosebumps series, I haven't read many of the classical series. I've probably read less than like 8 books, maybe less than 10 in total. And I would say this is way up there for me. This is a really good one, like top 5 good for me right now. And of course, there were 62 of those, so you say what you will. I'm just saying that the book itself was a really fun adventure. Again, kind of a slower building to a really good finale, but again, it wasn't disappointing like Night of the Puppet People from the Most Wanted series. It wasn't disappointing like the really wild, insanely stupid finale of Nightmare on Clown Street from the Most Wanted series. This had a really good slow build up to something really fun. I like this a lot. Again, if you're a comic book person and you never read Goosebumps, you might like this too as a cool tribute. If you're a Goosebumps fan who's always read the scarier stories or the really, really serious stories, you never found... I meant silly story, excuse me. But you never found a really good middle ground between scary and silly. This is it. Attack of the Mutants is a really good place for people who are kind of looking for that middle ground more in the Goosebumps world, who happen to like things like the MCU or classic Marvel or classic DC from back in the day. But anyway, what are your thoughts, folks? Put them down below in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and may the Lord Jesus Christ bless you guys today, and goodbye.